Hi everyone. As February 2026 has come to an end, I'd like to highlight the upgrades and bug fixes that I've handled in PatternMaker Pro over this last month. So the first thing we're going to talk about is pattern memorization and specifically recall errors. In the past, when the system encountered an error during recall, it would give you an error message stating which version the error occurred on. And you can see this is where your version is displayed as you're working on a file. So your only option was to cancel the recall, reopen the memorized draft, and try to figure out what went wrong. And there were a few problems with this. First of all, the error version didn't necessarily match where the error happened. So I've set up an example here so I can show you what I'm talking about. I created a line, and then I created this circle. And then I used the point and intersection tool to create this pink point where the line and the circle intersected. Then I drew this point in and then connected the two with a line. In the prior version, if this circle did not intersect this line, this point wouldn't be created. But on the recall, nothing would happen until you went to draw this line down here. And you would say, oh, connect it to this point and this point, but guess what? That one doesn't exist. And that would have happened on version 7 of the recall, and it would have said error on 7. Well, that's not really right. It actually errored on version 5 when you went to put this point in. So now the system tries to make sure that things are created when they should be. If the point isn't created, it will fail on version 5. In this case, and it even tells you what name the point was. So now I'm in the middle of the recall of that pattern. I just skipped showing it to you, and you can see we're all ready to go here. I picked a measurement set and I messed with the measurements a little bit. So watch what happens when I run the draft. You can see that it failed. So my circle is way too big and it's not intersecting the line. And it says that the memorize command on version 5, which is points at intersection, of your draft recall has failed when attempting to create. Here's the name of the point that I had on the original. And so it just stopped, and it stopped on the right version. So I think this is a really great upgrade. I know for myself it was really frustrating when it was erroring not in the right place. So hopefully these little hints will help you out. So the other thing that I changed, which you can see also here, is on the saving recalls with an error. So now you can choose to keep the draft the way it is right now. You can save it and just move on. In the past, when you had an error, your only option was to totally cancel the whole thing out. And that proved really frustrating. You know, you could be on version 125, which is putting the last little touches on a pattern, and have it error out on a recall, and you might want to just save it right where it is, and you know what's wrong, you'll fix it. So this will save you some time if you know what happened and you want to just continue on with the draft. The next series of updates have to do with pattern construction markings. I was finishing some patterns myself and realized that it would be really nice to have some more options for marking up the patterns. So the first one I created is the multi-point text tool. So you may have instructions or descriptions that you want to repeat in multiple places on the same pattern or different patterns in the workspace. And this tool allows you to write text and place it in multiple places. So for example, here's a pair of pants. And if you are creating really explicit instructions on your patterns, you might want to say, this is seam number whatever 2, and you're sewing the side seams together front and back. So you might want the same text in 2 different places. So what you would want to do is go up to, it's on the finish menu, and it's right up here, text at multiple points. And you can select anywhere you want for the first text to be placed. If you click, you can, and it's in the wrong place, go ahead and just click again, it'll move. And then when you're happy with the first one, continue. And now you can do the same for your second one. And then if that's all you wanted was the 2 of them, then you would say continue. Or if you were putting the same text in more than 2 places, just hit another, and you can keep going as long as you want. And then this is very familiar to you. It's just like any other text. So we would say I'm working in inches at the moment. I'll say 4 inches, and it says we'll just do step 2, so slide seam something, and preview it. And now we have all of the different text options. You can see that that same text was placed in both locations. We could rotate it so that it matched the seam lines a little bit better. We could make it bigger, whatever. You have all the standard text type stuff. This will save you some time and prevent a lot of duplication in your work. So our 4th addition would be construction details. The other thing that was missing in PatternMaker Pro was the construction details that we often have on our patterns. Now you have a tool that will allow you to add markings for gathers, tucks, ease, shirring, knife pleats, accordion pleats, box pleats, and inverted box pleats. I think I covered all the bases here. So all of them have unique markings and colorings, and you'll want to go ahead and refer to the manual because each one is slightly different, has a different set of inputs that you can choose from. So let's just do a little sample here. I have a line. It says up here next to notches, it just says construction detail. So you need to select a line or curve and then what type you want. So I'm going to pick this line and I'm going to keep it on gather and continue. So the first thing it wants to know is how far are we measuring to start this thing? And you'll have the opportunity to go from either end. So I'm in inches here. Let's say I want it in 2 inches from the end. And I want to gather in let's say a 4-inch area. And these are the guidelines. I'll show you in a second what that really means. I'll just put 2 inches here. And I can have an instruction, and this will show up on the guide. If you don't want an instruction, just erase that and it'll go away. So let's preview that. So there's our gather, and you can see this is 2 inches from the end and it goes for 4 inches. And then here's your opportunity to put in some description. So a gather is done in the blue with a wavy line. Now if I wanted it measured from the other end, I'd just change it and it's over. If it's on the wrong side of the line, just hit other side and it moves. So you can get this positioned anywhere you want. So here I've opened up the layer visibility. I have done some other ones that I want to show you, but I wanted to point out that each time that you create one of these, it creates a little group in the layers. And you don't want to edit these, just get rid of them. If you made a mistake, just come into the layers menu and delete the layer and start over. But there's the gather group that we just did. So these were hidden. I'm going to show those. And that gives you some idea of what they look like. This is a box pleat. It's got guidelines and fold direction on it. This is a knife pleat. And you have the option on all the pleats to do multiples. So in this case, I specified that I wanted this pleat and I wanted 3 of them and however far apart I said. So that's what's going on here. So you can do a whole row of knife pleats if you're doing a skirt or something. So here's our gather that we just finished. Here's ease. Shirring, you have the option of saying how many lines you want. This is 3. And here's a tuck. So that gives you some idea of what you can do with this tool. I think the people sewing your patterns will really appreciate it if you take the time to add this type of construction detail. So when I was thinking about how I could write some instructions for the construction of the patterns that I drafted, I realized that you often want to highlight particular parts of a pattern in detail in the written instructions. And you want a little picture of what you're talking about. And I know you could use a screenshot tool on your computer, but those aren't always real fun. And some people don't really have one that work very well. So I went ahead and created a tool within PatternMaker Pro that allows you to take a snapshot of your pattern zoomed in as much as you need, and it's really easy to use. As you know, PatternMaker Pro, this is all SVG, so you can go as tight, you just don't lose resolution with this. So you can come in and get just as much detail as you need for your image. So we can zoom and pan until we get it looking pretty much how we want. We'll come up here and open up the tool. It's in finish and it's on the end here. It looks like a little camera. So the minute that you pick this, you are activated. You can see that my cursor changed to crosshairs. So when I left mouse click, that's going to start the box. And when I release, it'll end the box. It's a quick process. So here we go. And it's done. And there it is. It's a PNG, so you get full transparent background. So it'll look nice on any instructions that you have. If you have color or whatever, it won't go white on you. And it's really handy. It works great. So nothing super special. If you want to take another image, just hit the button again and you're back in mode again. So it's really quick. So this last item was actually added at the request of a user. So we've got keyboard shortcuts now if you're interested. And you don't have to have a draft open to do these. They're up here off the main menu. You just select keyboard shortcuts. And here's a full list of every category of tools that there are. And you can just drop them open and pick whichever one you want. You'll notice that I've got a couple that I've set up here as an example. So let's say we wanted to do add point on line or curve. You would just highlight it, and then you do need to scroll down here to the continue button. So don't forget it's down here, and continue. And now you can type any key that you want in the input field, and you can save it and close, or you can save and another, which means it'll save it and then it'll open it back up so you can put another one in, so you can very quickly do all your shortcuts real fast. So let's do save and another. And now let's look. And there's our little H, which is a strange letter to choose, but on the add pointer line. So you can see how that works. If you accidentally pick the same thing, like if I went into something else and hit H, it would take it off of this one and put it on the new one. So it'll automatically adjust itself. You can't have any duplicates, so be aware of that. So I've decided that this is a feature that is completely at your discretion. I am not putting default keyboard shortcuts in here because I think it needs to be a really personal thing. You're going to set it up the way it works best for you, and I think that's the way it should be. I don't use keyboard shortcuts when I'm doing videos because I don't think that's conducive to learning. That's an advanced thing. So whatever I choose to set up has nothing to do with what you might choose. So go to town. I hope you like that one. Okay, so I've saved the scariest for last. This is logic sets, and this one is very specialized and very advanced. And it's not something that will be used by most of you. But I did want to make it available because it's something that I want to use. And as you should know by now, this program was written by me for me. I developed this for myself, so it needs to do everything I want to do. And I'm a pretty advanced pattern drafter, so I want to push it to the limits. Let me share some instructions with you that are very common, which I found in one of the books that I use. So this comes from the Metric Pattern Cutting for Women's Wear by Winifred Aldrich. This type of variable in instructions is actually quite common, so I really wanted to give everyone a way to deal with it. And basically what we're talking about is we're going to add an amount based on some other criteria. And if you're just drafting one off, it's not that big a deal. You just figure it up what it should be for your size, you put the amount in, and you're done. But that's not the way PatternMaker Pro works. We want to be able to remember patterns and have them be correct when it's done. So we have to give the system a way to look something up in a table is basically what we're talking about. So you can see here she's got, when using body sizes from the standard body measurement chart or personal measurements, add an extra 0.5 centimeters for each size up above size 14. Okay, well, let's take a look at those body measurements she's talking about. So here's the body measurements she's talking about in this part. And it says that each size up above size 14. So we don't use sizes, obviously. We can't put size 14 in our draft, but we certainly can look at the bust measurement. So that's what we're going to use as our reference because this is a draft for a bodice. So that's really appropriate, I think. So basically she's saying for every size above a size bust 96 centimeters, we're going to be adding a value. So let's go through and write this out in a logic table for ourselves. So here is the little logic table that we're going to come up with, but don't worry about it. We're going to do this line by line. So she's saying above the size 14. So above a 14 is a 16. So we're going to say if the bust is greater than or equal to 100 centimeters and less than 104, which is the 18, then we're going to add a half. That's what she says right here, a half a centimeter. So now if the bust is greater than or equal to an 18, but less than a 20, which is the 110, we're going to add 1 centimeter. And now if it's greater than a 20, but less than a 22, we're going to add 1.5 centimeters. And then we just work our way up. So we top out at the size 24. Honestly, I don't think you want to add more than this to anything, so I think we'll just top it right there. So that's our logic table. And this perfectly represents what she wants us to do in this statement. We've just changed it to using the bust measurement because we don't have sizes. So now what we need to do is a little bit of a conversion because this has if and statements in it. If this and this, then this. And we can't do that. That's more complex than we need it to be. It's actually very simple to cut this down. We just flip it upside down. And that's what we've done here. So if the bust is greater than or equal to 122 centimeters, which is the size 24, then we're going to add 2.5. If it's greater than or equal to 116, size 22, we're going to add 2. And on down the line. And then obviously at the end, if it is greater than or equal to 100, which is the 16, it's a half. Otherwise, it's 0, which insinuates it's less than 100. Now, you might be looking at this and thinking, okay, there's a problem here. Because what if the bust was 130? It would hit every single one of these, right? It is greater than this. It is greater than this. It would just keep adding. But that's not the way these logic systems work. They break out when they hit a true condition. So if our person had a 130 centimeter bust, it would say if it is greater than 122, add 2.5, and then it would break out. It wouldn't look at the next one. It just stops. And that's exactly why we flipped it upside down. This is much more efficient. If our person had a measurement of 112, it wouldn't be greater than this. It wouldn't be greater than this. It would be greater than 110. So it would hit here and it would add that 1.5 centimeters. So this works exactly how we need it to. So the logic sets are saved with the draft, and they are very exclusive to that draft, and they are actually saved with the SVG. They don't go into a separate place or anything. You can't create a table in one draft and use it in another. You're going to have to create another. I mean, it's not very often that would happen because typically you're following one set of instructions for a specific draft. Now, it will follow your draft so that when you do a recall, your table will be available to use. Now that we've figured out all the logic for our set, let's go ahead and get it built in the program. The logic sets are located on the Utilities menu up here at the far right. And we want to create a new set. And we need to give it a name. So let's be very specific because we're going to have to choose this later as we're doing this draft. And this set is very specific to this set of instructions. So close-fitting bodice, point 3 to 4 addition. And you'll see up here it also tells us to keep in mind that this is the rules we're going to create. if X compares to Y is true, then do A. If it's false, then do B. So you want to keep that in mind because that's the pattern that we'll follow. So this is rule number 1. And what value are we checking? Well, if we take a look at our logic table, it's the bust. That's what we're interested in checking. So this is the formula for X. And it could be a number or a formula or anything. And in this case, it's a measurement. So X is bust or chest measurement. And now what is the comparison? If the bust is what? Well, according to our table, if the bust is greater than or equal to, and now is Y. What are we comparing to the bust measurement? And it's just a value. It's 122 centimeters. So if this is true, what do you want to happen? Well, according to our little table here, we want to add 2.5 centimeters. And now we're at the end of the rule, and it's asking if this is false, do you want to assign a value or do you want to go on to the next rule? In this case, we're going on to another rule. So the rule's been recorded and we select continue to go on to number 2. So now we're at number 2. What are we checking? Again, we're just doing the bust all the way down. What's the comparison? Greater than or equal. The value this time is 116 centimeters. And if it's true, we want to add 2 centimeters. We want to do another rule. Okay, now we're on number 5, and I wanted to stop here and show you exactly how we're going to do this because it's the last rule of our rule table. So again, we're going to just select that bust measurement. And the value is 100 centimeters this time. If it's greater than 100 centimeters, we're going to add 0.5 centimeters. Now this is the last one in the table, so we're going to, if it's false, we want to use a value or formula. And in this case, it's 0. If the bust is less than 100 centimeters, we don't want to add anything. And we're finished. So it displayed the table over here in the workspace, and you'll want to compare this to what you've written out to make sure that you didn't make any errors. If you did make an error, you cannot go back and edit it. You'll just cancel and start over. This looks correct, so we're going to go ahead and save it. So after you've created a table, you can come in here and view it. And here it is. You can't edit it, but you can delete it. If there's an error or something and you need to redo the table, then just go ahead and delete it and start over. So let's verify something. Let's look at her instructions to see if we've done what she wanted us to do. And in the book, the example says that for a size 20, which is a 110 centimeter bust, we should add 1.5 centimeters for that. So let's see if our table works. So 110 centimeters would be greater than or equal to 110, and there's the 1.5. So we know we did our ranges properly. I'm just going to come in here and create a point. And now I'm going to do the add point from point tool. I'm going to select the base point, continue, and now I want to put this new point using the logic set. Calculate, and it came up 1 centimeter. So it evaluated the logic and it said that we should have 1 centimeter for this. So let's cancel this out and look at the measurements for this set that I'm on, which is the size 18. And let's look at the bust is 104. And if we look at our table, greater than or equal to 104 is 1 centimeter. So let's close this. Let's switch over to look at this set, which is my set. And my bust measurement in here is 38. And this is in inches. So 38 inches is 96.5 centimeters. So according to our table, if we run that same thing, the value should be 0. So let's give it a try. First, we need to switch over to using my set. So load active set, we'll pick mine. And let's do point from point again. We'll do it on the X. Logic set, this one, calculate, 0. So you can see this table is doing exactly what we intended it to do. And we could do the draft in the book using her instructions with any set of measurements we wanted to, and then we could memorize that draft and recall it. Depending on the set that's chosen, that value will change. And that's the point of these logic sets. Now, if this was a little bit too much for you, I completely understand. This can be really confusing. But if you're an advanced pattern drafter and you want to set up variable amounts based on specific formulas, you can absolutely do that now. And you may not be ready for this today, and that's cool, but someday you'll find it to be extremely powerful. So that's it for your February updates. I hope you find all these things very useful. The goal is always to provide you with all the tools you need to make your patterns more accurate and easier to use. And if you haven't used PatternMaker Pro before, I encourage you to give it a try using the free demo over on the website. It's really great software that just keeps getting better. I appreciate your time, and thank you for watching.